warp in 3, 2, 1.
Alright, computer. Let's hook up to local GNet hub and get this going.
Initiating connection to Jupiter GNet Hub. Connection to Jupiter GNet Hub established.
Okay, computer. Open up comms to all our viewers and begin transmitting our latest file.
Transmitting. John and the spaceboat. Harvest Fair.
John spent most of his evening answering some of the comments on Amy's interview. He'd expected an unusual large number of subscribers to watch the stream and, to a certain degree, a lot of posts. What he hadn't anticipated, Amy's story was riveting. Not only was the storyteller a genuine survivor of the ordeal most harrowing, unveiling this part of Applecrate's mysterious past caused quite a stir across the Terran part of GNet. He was sure that many would flock to Omeo Prime and follow in his steps, thoroughly exploring both the colony and the planet itself. Age-loggers would come too, but he was the first to successfully locate and feel the data pulse in this awesome place. John was the first sensationalite to even sit at the same table with the first, let alone interview her. With this important age-logger duty behind him now, he could concentrate on what mattered most to him, enjoying the local cuisine. Eve arrived early in the morning, and once more she carried gifts. After devouring the piping hot spinach and cheese-filled banista, they attempted to reach the road, or at least give it a good try. Applecrate was being invaded by hundreds of tourists. At least 50 starships landed, and a dozen more were still idling in orbit, clearly visible on his sensors. He wondered how many of those sentients had hyperlag. Only once in his early childhood had he had to take adjustment medicines to help him with weathering the hyperlag. Time zones were irrelevant in space. Having the ability to travel faster than light, sentients could reach any part of the galaxy, given they had well-equipped starship and enough fuel. Each starship had a hyperclock, and most were set to Galactic Universal Time, better known as star hours. Once pre-warp civilizations discovered hyperspace and subspace, they discarded the foolish notion that the universe was ever expanding. Indeed, once it did, and certainly parts still moved, but generally most things remained where they were, tethered by hyperspace. Early human scientists were no different and assumed the same thing, but that was before they could observe the hyperspace curvature with modern sensor technology. Eve, do you know a way to avoid the crowds? I know it's a small colony, but... John asked, almost expecting a negative answer, and was pleasantly surprised when his aide pointed at something. It was one well-hidden service tunnel shaft, nearly indistinguishable from the surrounding landing pads. Since the main road was clogged with travelers, many had chosen to trek straight through the countryside, and John saw a few small vehicles chasing after one another. It looked like the tourists were having a full-blown car race down there. Amy linked late yesterday, mentioned that the special ride she promised you was already arranged, John. Eve beckoned him to follow, while looking around carefully. We can reach the place quickly, and then all those people will no longer hinder our movement. They waited until most of the visitors were out of sight, and then Eve typed a code in her PDA. With a hard-to-detect hiss, a small door slid aside, revealing the tunnel, and they quickly dashed inside. John saw how the 2-meter-thick, crafted from armor-grade megasteel door silently closed behind and increased his pace. It was one of the many tunnels which French space colonists dug in order to hide their movements from the enemy. The practice was commonplace, part and parcel of living on the border colony. People built concealed positions, specially designed bunkers to hide during alien invasions or slaver raids. The tunnels they dug were for ease of movement and allowed for improved guerrilla tactics. Fighters of the colonial militia used them to sneak upon unwitting invaders. They were not planning an ambush. He and Eve were only trying to get an advantage over the throngs of tourists who had arrived on Omnia Prime far too early and in greater numbers than John had anticipated. Here. We are here, John. See that squiggle on the wall? Eve's gloved paw pointed at something which, if he'd come here alone, John would have never imagined to look for. She pressed the sign and then rotated her paw counterclockwise, causing another hidden door to slide open before them. We are close to one certain intersection, closer perhaps to Kobo's bakery than the woodworker's shop. Quick, the pilot just sent me a link. They won't remain hidden for long. John followed after the bunny. Eve hopped ahead, paced significantly quicker than his own. Only after reaching the end of that second tunnel had her words finally reached him. Pilot? What does this ride exactly require a pilot? Climbing up and looking around, John's eyes focused on something big, colorfully painted, and smiled. Eve frantically waved her paws, still running full speed. The mech's pilot gracefully lowered both arms, one of which was a reinforced metal basket filled with safety force fields. Amy emerged from the nearby home, quickly followed by another machine, slowly striding out of the garage. Now, standing beside the 15-foot-tall mech, John examined it in great detail. Indeed, the machine was nothing more than a brand new power loader, its frame very much indistinguishable from what the local loader girls piloted every day. However, the similarities ended there, since this mech's owner had fitted it with a cleverly designed and masterfully crafted suit of armor. It looked like something stolen directly from one of those mech hollow movies. Wonderfully quirky. The armor plating was not designed for war, but simply to look good. Covered from head to toe in glistening hollow paint, this machine cosplayed one very popular mecha series titled Raydam. What the pilot picked up with his free hand was a large fridge, proudly sporting the logo of Asahi Brewing Co. By the flip of a switch, his machine's elaborately painted cosplay armor suddenly projected hollow art in all directions. A dozen-strong Asahi mascots dancing around the mech, warning anybody who approached to be careful. Sun-chan looked exactly like an anthropomorphic animal with a smiling sun for a head, and since everything was created by top-notch hollow artists, well animated to boot. Amy strolled close, passing through one of the holograms, and while the cute mascot waved its little hands, making the warning signs, she chuckled. John, how do you like being on top of all things for a change? While you comfortably ride in the bucket, your pilot will stop on the occasion and try selling some of the beer. That fridge is actually a vending machine full of Asahi Super Moist Blue, which my business associate and I will introduce to Apple Crate's market. You can, of course, stream everything. I am sure that your subscribers will love to see the brand new cosplay armor, which is soon to be introduced to Raydam's next season. John wasted no time and climbed inside the metal basket, his holocam already on. He linked its feed to the mech's sensor, and in a couple of seconds the device beeped. It could record top-quality holo footage from all directions. The safety force field activated the instant Eve joined him, and the mech pilot then slowly raised his bucket-holding arm. You will receive a fair percentage of all sales this machine makes today, John. You know, the typical GNet advertisement gig, but with an added bonus. A complimentary container full of this new beer we're pushing today. This brew was created with my help and designed to promote our colony abroad. If all the work I did for my neighbors is a success, we should see immediate increase of our business in a month or so. Amy stepped away from the mech and added, Just do what you H-loggers usually do and creds will run like a river. Universe is my witness. After those obnoxious aliens nearly wrecked our homes, Apple Crate can use the business. Asahi execs were quite generous. The company invested a lot of money, time, and other resources in this venture. Good luck. She pointed to a small crowd of tourists forming in the distance. The aliens then quickly began moving in this direction. Colorful hologram projected by a tall mech were almost impossible to conceal. Get to the marketplace. Avoid the tourists, or they will slow you down so much that by the time you reach the fair, all the food will be eaten. The mech did a couple of test steps, and John heard its pilot performing the usual safety drill. It was a thing commonplace for all Japanese businesses whose employees operated heavy machinery. No matter where they were or what vehicle they operated, everyone's thought was safety first. Eve waited until their machine was ready to move and reached inside one of her uniform's pockets. She then gave John a necklace. From its handcrafted leather lace dangled a piece of wood shaped like a bunny's paw. She then reached and gifted another similar amulet to the pilot. He quickly placed the good luck charm around his neck. It's perhaps a little old-fashioned, but please wrap it with me. Those necklaces belonged to my grandmother. She was a construction engineer and never fell from anywhere but her own bed. Eve chuckled while their pilot skillfully evaded a large mob of tourists with a long jump over someone's yard fence. Soon the tall machine managed to squeeze between two buildings and they entered Apple Crate's market. The place was packed to the limit, even with the additions and upgrades the locals had built in before the event. On the marketplace furthest edge, John caught a glimpse of a starship bearing Asahi's logo and instantly recognized one of their more famous ad jingles. Surrounded now on all sides by holograms, the Asahi mech moved slowly, its vending machine loaded with beer lowered. He already spotted one place which sold pierogi and another whose owner, a large gorilla, was selling piping hot pastries with breakneck speed. The aroma of food, alcohol, and spice was maddening, and John's mouth had already begun to water. Face adorned with the biggest of smiles, he happily announced the beginning of his last stream on Apple Crate. His holocam automatically turned away from the sight of tourists queuing to buy beer. Greetings everybody and welcome to Apple Crate's Harvest Fair. Follow me and my new assistants, the Ops Officer Evelyn, while we explore the local sights and tastes of the best street food this amazing colony has to offer. Imagine that. People here managed to build a shotegai in just a couple of weeks and finish construction one day before the Harvest Fair started. Also, he turned the camera around and aimed at the mech. Please do marvel at this never-before-seen mecha armor to be introduced in the next season of Raidum. As always, brought exclusively to you by yours truly. John pointed directly at the camera, smiled, and then stated, "This is what you subscribed for."
Okay, computer, that's it. Disconnect from the local GNet and set course for home.
Disconnecting GNet. Setting course. Terra. Spooling engines now. Initiating. Jumping in 3, 2, 1.